worst NBA franchise series. We've gone over the Wizards, we've gone over the Pistons, and now we have ourselves a worthy competition with the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah.
Now, why are we doing the Minnesota Timberwolves, you might ask? This is a team that is third in the West right now. They have Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, a bunch of dogs here. They have a chance to potentially win the whole thing, potentially, according to some analysts. But we're going to go through their history here because this is a team who has been around just as long as some of these other franchises. And what have they done? Believe it or not, the Minnesota Timberwolves have the worst winning percentage in NBA history. And that even includes the playoffs as well.
Damn. Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Hornets, and the Hornets were bad. You know, the highlight of that was really them bringing Steve Clifford back to coach their team again after he already proved he was a bad head coach, because we all know the second time is better, especially when you apply that to relationships and business there. And then also, we covered the Wizards, and the Wizards had won a finals, at least as the Bullets, so that's cool. And then the Pistons we covered, and they also had some nice things. But we're here with the Timberwolves because you trade away Kevin Garnett, or you have Kevin Garnett on your team, but even when Kevin Garnett was there, you went from 04-05 all the way up until 17 and 18 without a playoff appearance. And then you did it when you had Jimmy Butler there. You ended up trading for Jimmy Butler. And then Jimmy Butler hated his life in Minnesota so much that is the famous moment where he took everyone from the bench and took on the starters and beat them single-handedly. He's like, Andrew Wiggins, you are a bitch. Karl Anthony Towns, likewise to you. The sentiment is there. And then they're like, okay. Jimmy Butler leaves. He ends up going to the Philadelphia 76ers. After that, yeah, I think that was after he went to the 76ers. But you also have, what's unique about them is also the lowest winning percentage, but you could apply that to their trades as well, because, well, they also have the worst winning percentage as far as games. They would probably have the worst winning percentage as far as trades in the NBA. And then starting off with the Kevin Garnett trade.
Yeah, the Kevin Garnett trade. I'll get the package up here, but also, while we're talking about that, how about the Rudy Gobert trade, where they gave up not one, not two, not three, not four, 5 first-round picks for the next decade, giving up for Rudy Gobert. And what has it turned into? Well, they're third in the West, so I guess that counts for something, right?
Yeah.
And then let's not include their draft woes as well, where they had not one but 2 opportunities to draft Steph Curry. Maybe you've heard of him. Greatest shooter of all time. At worst, top 10 player of all time. And who did they draft? They drafted Johnny Flynn, and they drafted friend of the show, Ricky Rubio.
Yeah. And it's like, no hate to Ricky Rubio, but like, is he Steph Curry? No. But would Steph Curry be who he is today in Minnesota? Probably not. And that's just the skill that the Minnesota Timberwolves have, even though they do have someone like Karl Anthony Towns, who said personally that he's going to go down as someone who changed the game. I don't know who was giving Karl Anthony Towns advice or telling him that, but Karl Anthony Towns has not changed basketball at all.
Yeah, so I have the Kevin Garnett trade here, and this is what it turned into. This was, at the time, the largest trade package for any player, and this is what they got.
Okay.
Hold your breath.
In history?
In history at the time, 2007. Okay. Al Jefferson, Ryan Gomes, Sebastian Telfair, friend of the show, Gerald Green, Theo Radcliffe. By the way, Theo Radcliffe at this time was in his late 30s. I want to mention that. Cash considerations, plus the Boston Celtics top 3 2009 pick, which ended up turning into Wally Szczerbiak / Ricky Davis trade. So all these players here, what did Kevin Garnett do? First year, wins the title with the Celtics, makes it to another finals, and then is a perennial contender with the Celtics. But then they get Ryan Gomes, who left immediately, Theo Radcliffe, who left basically immediately, Gerald Green ends up becoming a 2K legend. If you know, you know. Sebastian Telfair, and what turned into that, and Wally Szczerbiak.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be better off if they drafted Waleed Ahmed instead of Wally Szczerbiak with that. But yeah, I mean, you trade away Kevin Garnett and you don't make the playoffs until
there's a 15-year hiatus. They have one of the longest hiatuses in NBA history.
Yeah, and the craziest thing is this team is okay, so you're started in 89 and 90, and then you draft Kevin Garnett, and then you didn't make the playoffs for the first 7 years of being a franchise, and then after that you make it to the playoffs, lose in the first round. You make it again, lose in the first round. Make it again, lose in the first round. You go 8 years of making the playoffs and losing in the first round. That is a skill.
That is honestly, you want to talk about, like, we made fun of the 2010 Raptors and how consistently they were, but first round exit, first round exit, first round exit, first round exit, first round exit. This sounds like I'm on fucking repeat at this point. And then they make it to the conference finals against the Lakers at that point. And ironically enough, I mentioned to you earlier how they had the worst playoff record in NBA history. They're 21 and 41 in their playoff games all time. And ironically enough, 10 of their 21 playoff wins came in 2004 when they made their only conference championship, the only time they won a playoff series. So 10 of their 21, you want to call it 50% of all their playoff wins came in 2004 when it was Kevin Garnett versus Kobe and Shaq. And at the time they had Gary Payton and Karl Malone as well, facing off against that team. And then after that, building up 8 consecutive first round exits, only to just bust in the conference finals and not making a playoff appearance for 15 years. The city of Minnesota, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I am sorry to the city of Minnesota, because after that, you're like, oh, we made the conference championship after losing 8 straight years in the first round. That has to be something, right? Because no, after that, you go from basically 05 to 2018, so 13 years without making the playoffs.
Did they even have a winning season in there?
I think so, because you had Kevin Love. No, you don't have a winning season. Yeah, so you go losing the conference championship. You miss the playoffs going 44 and 38 with Kevin Garnett, and then you don't have a winning season again until 17-18. So the year after you make the conference championship, you go 48 and 38. So you have a 12-year gap without a winning season.
Pathetic. And this is also missing on so many. We've gone through their history before. Check out some of our old videos about the Timberwolves, but just pathetic.
The interesting thing about the Timberwolves, though, is basically all their leaders in win shares over the course of their time have been big men. So you have Kevin Garnett, who didn't lead them in win shares when he was there, and then it's Kevin Love, Al Jefferson, and then Karl Anthony Towns. Every single year he's been on the team, and then the past 2 years, Rudy Gobert. What does that tell you? And then you have this team where people are like, I think they could do good in the playoffs. I think they could potentially win.
Sure.
But first of all, the problem with Rudy Gobert is he is a tease. He's one of those players who's really good in the regular season, very useful when people don't try on defense, but he makes his bread and butter with rebounds, blocks, and things of that nature on the defensive end, but he still can't switch on the perimeter, and he is absolutely useless in the playoffs. And he's always been one of those players who can't do anything on offense. He's a good defensive player, but is he worth 5 first-round picks? Absolutely not. So you trade 5 firsts for Rudy Gobert. You get the most back in history for an NBA trade as far as assets for Kevin Garnett, and then miss the playoffs for every single year after Kevin Garnett leaves until you get Jimmy Butler. And then Jimmy Butler hates his life so much that he immediately wants to leave and go to the 76ers. And then you have Anthony Edwards now, who has been the one bright spot on your team. But I'm like, this is a team this year at the 3rd seed. They're scheduled to play like probably the Kings or the Dallas Mavericks.
Right now it's the Kings, yeah.
I mean, if we get the Kings, I know the Kings haven't been the best this year, and you could probably beat the Kings, but if De'Aaron Fox turns into what he was versus the Warriors last year, like, I don't know if it was the Warriors weren't as good as we thought they were last year, because they had just made the finals previously, but the Kings in the playoffs, like, you'll have Sabonis versus Rudy Gobert. Okay, who's going to be the most useless out of those two players? And then after that, is it going to be De'Aaron Fox or Anthony Edwards? And with what I saw from De'Aaron Fox last year in the playoffs, like, this is a team. And then Keegan Murray is also someone who can get extremely hot.
They have experience with a lot of players too. They got Harrison Barnes too.
Harrison Barnes, like, this is a team that's definitely going to lose in the first round, but it's like, I don't know. I think the Wizards' history might be better there.
Well, we haven't gone over their top 12 either, because their top 12, obviously, we're going to have all-time great power forward in Kevin Garnett there, and we can't say anything wrong about him. He's one of the best of all time.
Yeah.
And then it goes Karl Anthony Towns, who, big man-wise, we talked about how important the big man is to the Timberwolves. We're going to see some notable guys that we've seen, right? Karl Anthony Towns is number 2.
Yeah. Karl Anthony Towns is like one of those guys that, like, if you could sum him up in one word, it's just disappointing. I feel like he has so much talent. He could be someone like a Giannis. He could be Anthony Davis, but he just doesn't have that dog in him. Like, you are there with Anthony Edwards, and you're a big man who can shoot threes, handle it, and get to the rim at will. You could be a much better defender than you are. Like, feel like after Kevin Garnett, it's like Karl Anthony Towns, disappointing. And honestly, I would take prime Kevin Love over him.
Yeah. I think Karl Anthony Towns, if we're going to relate it to football, because we are a football podcast, he reminds me of these two quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, who I kind of put together because both of them are super talented. Both of them maybe not in the best situation, and both of them have so much talent, but both of them kind of let me down. They have to be in the conversation for like top in the league as far as like their position. If you're talking about best big men, he'll be in the conversation, but he isn't quite to that level of some of these other big men, like a Joel Embiid, like a Joker, like a Giannis. He's a tier below, but disappointing overall.
Yeah, and then we have Wally, not even going to try and pronounce his last, Zerbiak.
Celtic legend.
Sam Mitchell. Congratulations to you for being a Timberwolf, I guess. Then we have
Gorgio Dang.
And then the fact that Ricky Rubio's on this list isn't immediate, like, okay, you lost. Like, he's your 7th best player of all time, according to Basketball Reference, as far as win shares. Like, give me a break. And they have not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but you have 5. No, actually 6. You have 6 white guys in your top 12. What does that say about you? Basketball's an athletic sport. Like, and you know, I'm not trying to discriminate against the whites in this situation, but basketball, we know, is dominated by not white people. You have Luka.
Unless if it's the 70s Celtics, that's literally it.
Unless it's the 70s Celtics, and then Jokic and some of his fans don't even necessarily consider him to be white there. He's Eastern European or like Russian, and he's a Serbian player. So it's like you have Ricky Rubio.
Dude, the thing is with Ricky Rubio, he's one of those guys that you talk about because we went over some of the drafts in the past, and we talk about who was picked ahead of him. He was a point guard who was drafted right before Steph Curry. That's what he's known for. And Ricky Rubio, he's been a fine start in the NBA, and I know he retired recently. God bless his soul. But he is known as the guy who was drafted ahead of Steph Curry, the greatest point guard of all time, arguably.
Yeah.
Disaster.
Absolute disaster. And yeah, you're 6 of the top 12 players on the Timberwolves are white. I think we could pretty much go through every NBA team, and that'll be my homework. That'll be your homework in the comments. Please name me a team on Basketball Reference that has 6 of the top 12 players as white guys, and I think the answer will probably be none. Even the Celtics probably won't. You have like Kevin McHale, Larry Bird. I don't even think Danny Ainge would be in their top 12.
Probably like Bob Cousy and people like the 60s Celtics maybe, but that was the 60s. That was a different time. But the rest of this team here, I know who do we have after Ricky Rubio?
We have Terrell Brandon, Christian Laettner.
Christian Laettner, who's known for Duke. He's known for playing for Duke.
Tom Gigalotti.
Nice.
Nikola Pekovic.
Nice.
I remember him actually vividly. And then we have Joe Smith. You want to talk about an auto-generated name? Yeah, Joe Smith.
That's incredible.
So I think we found out what's wrong with the Timberwolves and why you have the lowest winning percentage in the league. We answered that question. We went over their best player, and you have Kevin Garnett on there, but is Kevin Garnett a better player all time than Isaiah Thomas? Probably not. I don't know. He's right up there. He's right up there. And then we'll go over probably the Magic next week. He's definitely better than anyone who is on the Hornets. So yeah, the Minnesota Timberwolves are a contender for the worst franchise in NBA history. Follow along that as we keep covering it, but